Hello and welcome back to Talking Insights here with Esomar. We've got another great guest today, Vinay Ahuja, who is the Vice President of Insights and Analytics for Procter Gamble Europe. Vinay, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me, Asim. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I mean, you are, at Procter Gamble, where there's basically been 100 years of collecting insights on consumers. And I'm really interested and curious, what are the significant changes that you've observed over that period of time and the different ways that P&G has kind of gone about collecting consumer insights?
Sure thing, Asim. Hey, but first thing, just for the record, I have not personally been around for 100 years.
Fair point. Fair point.
But fair to say, we are very proud that this year, 2024, P&G is indeed celebrating our 100-year anniversary
Amazing.
Of market research at P&G. And indeed, P&G has been a pioneer in this field.
Yeah.
It all started back in 1924.
Wow.
When the company asked itself a question, which was a very simple question, which said, how many people use our Ivory soap brand, which was our major brand then, for washing hands and body versus washing dishes and clothes?
Okay.
And that simple question, which at that time nobody knew the answer, not the CEO, none of the senior executives, sparked a curiosity about how people use our products.
Wow.
And that led to the foundation of the first formal market research department back in 1924. And that has then evolved over the decades to our analytics and insights practice that I have the privilege to lead for P&G today. So for P&G Europe today. Okay. Can we cut that and redo this part?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I think I'm just getting a bit familiar.
Of course.
You don't mind we
Absolutely.
restart?
No, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
But is this background helpful a little bit
Yeah,
before I get into answering
this is really great. This is really great.
Something like
this
that?
is really great. I love that story, right? About,
I digress, but I wanted to
No. It's amazing.
Okay.
It's amazing.
We start again?
Yeah.
Okay,
No worries.
thank you.
Just continue
Sorry.
doing the thing, and then when I'm editing,
No.
I'll just cut it.
Okay, so you please restart.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So Vinay,
No, do you want to restart?
you want to restart the whole
yeah,
thing?
Please,
Happy
if
to.
you don't mind.
Happy to.
Sorry.
Yeah. Hello and welcome back to Esomar Talking Insights. Today we're here with Vinay Ahuja, who is the Vice President of European Market Insights for Procter Gamble. Vinay, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Asim. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So Vinay, as I understand it, 2024 is the 100-year anniversary of Procter Gamble doing market research and insights. Tell us a little bit about the significant changes that P&G has observed in doing market research over those 100 years.
Happy to. But first, completely for the record, I have not been doing this for 100 years.
Fair point.
Okay.
Fair point.
Just over 3 decades. But no, indeed, it's absolutely a great privilege and honor for P&G to be celebrating 100 years of our market research anniversary this year. It all started back in 1924.
Wow.
And that was in Cincinnati, Ohio. And the company asked itself a really simple but seemingly difficult question, which was how many people use the Ivory soap brand, which was our major brand back then, for washing their hands and body versus washing dishes and clothes.
Right.
Simple question, we might think, but it stumped all the executives at that time because they had no idea. And that led to P&G collecting its first market research data, and the market research department was formally established within P&G back then. Wow. And that over decades and the past century has then evolved into today what we call the analytics and insights practice, for which I have the privilege to lead for P&G in Europe today. Now, when I look back and having studied the history of our work and that of the industry, the way I think about the evolution and changes that have happened, maybe we can look at it in 3 dimensions. What we do,
Okay.
how we do it, and where market research shows up.
Right.
So we think about what we do. Interestingly, that is something that has not fundamentally changed. Even today, on every brand, on every category in every country, we're still asking the same type of question that we asked back in 1924. And that's the foundation of our consumer focus and our, aspiration to understand consumers closely and be close to them and use that to guide the brand building for P&G's portfolio and how we create superior brand experiences,
Right.
whether it's a superior product, package, brand communication, retail experience. It all starts with understanding the consumer's job to be done, their habits, their attitudes, their lifestyle. Hasn't changed on any brand. Now, if you think about the how we do things, that has dramatically changed over the last century, right? With each technological advancement that came about, our methods changed. So how we connected with consumers has kept evolving. Think about the time. It all started with door-to-door, face-to-face interview, right? That's how P&G started market research, right? We were doing that, and then as the cost of long-distance telephony became cheaper, the industry and P&G moved from face-to-face interviews to telephone interviews.
Makes sense.
1970s, computer-aided methods facilitated data collection and analysis. Mid-1990s, as internet connectivity and usage took off, online surveys. Then desktop, mobile, device agnostic surveys, right? Today, big data, AI.
Right.
So the how we have been doing things has continued to evolve, and I believe that will continue to keep evolving. Now, if you think about where market research shows up, and that has continued to expand, right? And that's because as the world becomes more data rich and connected, the applications of market research keep growing.
Right.
You know, I can think back to so many examples. Media research. This was not necessarily a priority for many analytics and insights teams around the world. But I think we've all seen in the last, decade, how you and I consume media, entertainment, information, engage with content is completely different.
Right.
So understanding how consumers get, learn about brands, discover brands, how do we induce those experiences? We need to go back and relearn and re-understand that. So I think market research, analytics and insights will keep expanding in the future to new spaces as society and consumers transitions evolve.
Right.
So to recap, I would say looking back last 100 years, the what we do hasn't changed and I don't believe should change.
Right.
Because it's really the focus on the consumer, right? The how we do it has continued to change, will continue to evolve. And the where will continue to expand as we get more possibilities.
Right. That's so amazing. It's almost such a good kind of 5-minute summary of the entire market research industry as a whole, right? It really kind of clarifies that we're still asking the same questions at the end of the day, but it's the how and the where that is applied that's really transforming. And even today, at such a rapid pace now with AI and big data, and you mentioned kind of the way that we consume media is almost changing on a month-by-month, quarter-by-quarter basis, right? These things are changing so rapidly.
So I think what's really key, Asim, I think you captured very well, is how do we really anticipate the future, the changes and the transformation that's happening, so that we can build our capabilities to get ahead and understand consumers and meet them where they will want to be.
Right.
Rather than being in a catch-up mode and then finding that consumers don't want to engage with market researchers in a way that's not maybe relevant to them. So I think that's our responsibility as an industry, and one at P&G that we think about and try to work a lot, is how do we update our capabilities so that we can be in tune and ahead, if you will, of how consumers want to engage with us.
That makes a ton of sense. And so you've had this kind of 100-year history at P&G. Not you specifically, but P&G as a whole has been doing market research for 100 years. What are some of the most groundbreaking products or technologies that have kind of emerged from this history in terms of how these products impact the consumer life cycle?
Asim, it's a short question, but that answer could go on for hours. Because, and the honest reason is that P&G's philosophy is, for all our brands, is really grounded in one simple statement, which is the success of all our brands is really directly correlated to the proximity to the consumer. So every brand building work we do for all our brands really starts with the consumer, and the consumer is always in the loop at each stage, whether we're developing the product, package, communication. But I'll give you maybe just 3 recent examples. Right? How many of us have trouble sleeping? Right? I'm sure all of us can relate at some point to either falling asleep, not being able to stay asleep, or just waking up tired. And, the stats back it up. More than 70% of people in Europe claim they have trouble sleeping, but, only less than 20% use some kind of sleep aid.
Interesting.
So, our consumer understanding gave us the clue that people were really looking for something that they could use without having a dependency effect or that next day grogginess.
Right.
So P&G actually launched a few years ago a brand product called ZQuil, which is a sleep aid, a food supplement in a gummy form, right? That has already, within the short period, become Europe's #1 sleep aid brand,
Wow.
right? So that's one example. I'll give you another example. Curly hair, right? You and I can relate to it, right?
For those that can't see, you've got two bald-headed men in the room.
With lots of curly hair, I imagine, right? But did you know that 91% of women who have curly hair still keep looking for new products all the time? Because they feel that the one they have are either too light or heavy. So when our Aussie brand that is part of our hair care portfolio discovered this, we developed a new bouncy curls formula, and that has been very successful because it was designed to address the needs of these specific consumers, and it's been really delighting consumers who have this need. I'll give you yet another example, one that we often don't talk about: urinary incontinence. A large number of women 30% of women face this, right? But less than 15% use any incontinence product. It's a category that's unfortunately stigmatized.
Yep.
Women don't feel comfortable to talk about it. Many don't even know what to call it, where to seek for help. So our Always discreet brand understood this and then created a positive narrative around it, trying to normalize the conversation, and created a product that was really discreet and really helped with that incontinence problem. This has not only, of course, been doing well from a market share and growing the category, but importantly is delighting women who have this problem. So, I could go on, but hopefully these three examples demonstrate that the foundation of any P&G innovation and brand building is really grounded in understanding the consumer job to be done, her needs, or his attitudes, and so on.
I think these are three fantastic examples because it really shows how kind of niche you can start to get and how many different jobs there are to be done in these different consumer product areas that market research can really uncover. And that can still uncover even 100 years later at the end of the day, that there's still so much that we can understand about consumers. And you kind of mentioned that, a large part of your job is kind of looking ahead, right? Making sure that you're future-proofed and you can kind of continue with this level of agility and very specific understanding of micro consumer groups. Tell us a little bit more about that. Looking ahead, what are the key areas for P&G's future research, and where do you kind of anticipate these innovations will shape the company's next 100 years?
That's a great question, Naseem. So as we look to the future ahead, I think today the opportunity is clearly how do we leverage emerging technologies, whether it's generative AI or big data, and the whole conversation around these, in my opinion, needs to be around how do these technologies help us to connect and understand real human beings.
Right.
We're interested in how can these technologies help us make our samples more representative. There are still a number of people who, because they're difficult to reach or not being, systematically included in our sampling approaches as an industry, that we need to find a way using the technologies that their voice is elevated and appropriate, because their needs are perhaps unserved or underserved.
Right.
One of P&G's clear biggest focus has been and continues to be, and I believe will remain, is how do we reach each and every consumer in the world to serve them better. But to do that, our work has a responsibility to make sure it's inclusive of all consumers. Right. So as we think about all these emerging technologies and the data that we're now able to harness, so our focus is going to continue to be on this inclusivity, right? And how do we maybe use that? We also know there's been a lot of fraud in our industry with, sampling and so on. How can technology help us address that better? I'm sure we can use technology to make our data much more, representing real people who we are trying to understand. Privacy is going to be another important aspect, right? Not just in the context of the current global regulations and consumer concerns, but if you really think about it, we have moved from a world in market research where we used to ask questions, carefully designed questions. Today we have moved really to listening and observing.
Right.
Because people offer opinions
Right.
more spontaneously. In that context, we have to think about the role of privacy
Yeah.
and how we grow our work. Because it's going to be more and more based on listening to what people are, putting out there.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be an important priority. So as we really think about it, I think the future is going to be about human,
Yep.
the real human being,
Yep.
the data plus technology. I think it's that human data technology has been guiding us for the last 100 years.
Right.
That technology of the decades past doesn't sound high tech today,
Yeah.
but it was at some point revolutionizing what we did. So our evolution has continued to be driven by keeping the human at the center,
Right.
using more data, using technology. So question would be, how do we keep using that combination of those three
Yeah.
to propel us forward?
That makes a ton of sense, and I think it's such a good point for everybody to remember as the conversations go into AI and big data. That at the end of the day, we still want to make sure the human is at the center, and that we're listening to every single person, and that we're reducing bias and really making sure that people's data stays private, and that we can make sure that we're getting the right insights from people who may not want to talk about some of these things, right? Even in the three examples that you gave, obviously, if you don't have privacy at the center, you're not going to learn those things, right? About incontinence and different things, different health, jobs that people have to be done. Yeah, how
I
does...
think you said it very well. I'll just say,
Yeah.
we have to remember, behind every data that we look at and use is a real human being.
Correct.
Behind every single one and zero,
Right.
right, is a consumer,
Yeah.
a real person. We should never forget that and keep that in front and center.
I mean, I think it's such an amazing point, because when we think about big data, everything just gets back to numbers, right? It's like, you miss the fact that there's a human behind that piece of data. So how does P&G kind of foster this culture of innovation and maintaining this forward-thinking mindset amongst the research teams, and driving this kind of successful product development, but keeping the human at the center of that culture?
I think it really comes down to the culture that we try to promote within P&G. When I think about the kind of people that we hire, the kind of traits that we try and develop through our work, is really focused on four key characteristics. First and foremost is curiosity. Curiosity for why people do what they do, right? Second is courage to speak up. Speak up for the consumer when it's maybe not very popular in front of business discussions,
Interesting.
right? When there are other drivers of decisions, it's how do you speak up? What does the consumer really want, right? How does he or she really think about our brands or products and so on? Third is, I would say, adaptability. With so much change happening around, how do we adapt and embrace to new approaches, new contexts? I think we've all been living in a world where there's been a lot of revolution, change, and how do we really bring that on without feeling like, we have to throw away all the good stuff, right? And the fourth is really constant learning. I think we're continuing to see a world in which more possibilities are emerging. So, helping people learn something new every day, I think becomes really our mantra to keep being relevant, but also stay ahead. So it's really this focus at the center on curiosity, courage, change and adaptability, and constant learning that we try to drive, that I think is the cornerstone of our ability to keep fueling innovative ideas.
Yeah.
And, teams are really encouraged to speak up for the consumer, even when they're not popular, because that's fundamentally what people who work in analytics and insights at P&G
Right.
are there for.
That just sounds like four amazing pillars, and such a great place for insights professionals to go and work and flex that curiosity at the end of the day. It's amazing to hear 100 years later the amount of exciting stories and innovations and insights that Procter & Gamble is still pulling out of the market and innovating amongst.
Well, I'll just add that I think we couldn't have done it alone. It's a collaboration with industry partners. Over the past so many decades, I can only thank everybody on P&G's behalf, but also the ones we work with today, who fuel us with ideas, bring us solutions that we're able to then work together to put at the service of our brands and ultimately to the consumer.
Right.
So it's really a collaborative effort. And I hope that we can continue that together as an industry.
Absolutely.
And keep going forward.
Vinay, this has been such an exciting conversation. Not only is it a 100-year history of Procter & Gamble, and in many ways it's a 100-year history of the industry. And I think it's been so fun to learn and kind of hear about how these things have changed over time and also think about where the next 100 years will go. Vinay, thanks so much for being on the show today. This has been a fantastic discussion. Appreciate you being here.
Happy to have been here. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can't know the answer to a question without first asking it. But how do you ask the questions? More importantly, how will people answer them? That is where Question Pro comes in to support you, empowering you to build and deploy amazing experiences that collect clean and useful data. With our powerful online-based, built-for-enterprise survey platform, it is easy to create, collect, and act on your data. Create an impactful survey in minutes from scratch by importing an existing survey, or choose from over 350 ready-made templates that have been vetted by our expert market research professionals. Add as many respondent contacts as you want and share them through multiple distribution methods. Collect offline data and use white-labeled mobile apps to ensure data collection is extensive and up-to-date. Take advantage of our specialized services to manage enterprise projects, as well as the instances where the insights collection is complicated but imperative. Then, leave the rest to Question Pro. Sit back and watch us work magic as the data is analyzed and compartmentalized into functional insights automatically. Create role-based access reports in addition to exporting the data and insights into your proprietary toolset, allowing you to focus on what's most important, making smart decisions. Question Pro, survey software that gets the job done.